Tony Stark is in trouble. A federal summons appeared at his door, requiring him to turn over any and all recorded biometric data by the exhansal prosthesis known as the Iron Man. In short, the United States government is looking to shut Tony down and put an end to his Iron Man suit once and for all. Why, you might ask? Simple. Tony relapsed. The world was ending, he was sure of it, and in order to get the attention of an all-powerful god, Tony sacrificed his sobriety. And now the government is looking to prove that Tony Stark is unfit to serve as Iron Man by subpoenaing his biological data and proving he fell off the wagon. When Tony arrived at the federal building, however, the government got a little more than it bargained for. "Tony Stark, I was asked to provide some documentation," he said smugly as he waltzed in, carrying a small cardboard box under his arm. "Mr. Stark," he was greeted. "Thank you very much for coming down. These are the records?" "Oh, hell no," Tony smiled back. "I just thought you guys could use this to prop the door open. The records are outside. Come on." Outside, fully loaded 16-wheelers awaited the government's analysis, each filled to the brim with documents. Buried in the haystack, Tony had hidden the needle of evidence they were looking for, but it would take everything the government had to find it in the first place. There's 19 trucks arriving here, each one hauling a trailer full of, gotta be at least 1,000 boxes or so. "Remember to lift with your back," Tony said smugly as he suited up and flew away. Across the planet, the Mandarin was awaiting a meeting with his newest recruit. "Melter, you've been paged," a young man was notified. The kid looked down at the surgical scars running up and down his hands. "They cut my hands and arms and fingers all up and put stuff in me that makes it... I got like finesse now," the Melter said as he put his hands together and liquefied the mug between his palms. "You remember what's inside of you now," his handler Blizzard advised him. "They got bombs in all of us. Don't screw around. Just wanted to check in with you. Make sure you're doing okay," the Mandarin's right-hand man told the Melter as he sat before the international terrorist. I'm sorry," the Melter told his bosses. "Have I done something? I feel like I screwed up and I haven't done anything." The Mandarin spoke up. "Well now, that's rather the concern." His right-hand man put a hand on the Melter's shoulder. "Before you're deployed, I want to make sure. Are we cool?" he asked the boy. The Melter stared back. "You know what the difference is between me and all those other kids out there you've been working on? Iron Man ain't never laid a finger on me, man," the kid said, determination burning in his eyes. Back in Stark's workshop, Tony and James Rhodey are passing the time playing chess. "Is this fun for you?" Rhodey asks eventually. "Just gets my mind moving in the right directions," Tony told him. "Gets me thinking right." Tony paused, looking down at the board. "There's a very big, very important, and so far very brutal game going on all around us, and I only just realized it, Rhodey. So let's you and I start figuring out how we're going to win." However, the next day, a new enemy reared their ugly head. Two more government officials, sent by Justine Hammer, approached Tony's offices with a proposition. "Stark, let's not waste another's time. We know you got drunk, Tony. We know it, you know it. And we know the proof we need is on a piece of paper we're gonna find on one of those trucks." Hell," Tony whispered as he listened to the general lecture. "Later today, a court order is gonna crush you like a ton of bricks, Stark," the official threatened. "Your company will be property of the United States government by the time the markets close, and you'll never, ever pilot that suit, or your own car for that matter, again." Then, the general took out a small, innocent-looking silver band from his pocket. "Unless, we want you to wear this from now on." "What is that thing?" Stark said, looking at the tech warily. "It's your governor, buddy," the officials told him. "This will add a loop into the decision process of executing the Iron Man suit. Namely, us." The general held the governor out to Tony. "Think of it as a bleeding-edge breathalyzer. It'll let us check on your general, let's say, well-being." Tony stared angrily at the two officials as they rattled off their arguments. Tony stuck his finger out at the federally funded blackmailers. "I'm not going to let anyone, the Pentagon or Hammer, or I'm not going to let you decide when I get to be Iron Man and when I don't." But in the end, Tony knew he was beat. "I don't want anyone to see me do this," Stark told Pepper as the two officials left his office, bowing his head in acceptance. Days later, Tony was responding to a report from Los Angeles of some tech-based disturbance. When he arrived, he immediately clocked the one responsible. "Whirlwind," Tony called out as he jet towards the supervillain. A brutal fight took place, with Tony just barely managing to gain the upper hand. Whirlwind, an old villain from Tony's past, seemed to be souped up with enhanced technology that even Iron Man had trouble staying ahead of. Miles away, in downtown LA, the Melter got the green light to start causing havoc of his own. "Got it. I'm gonna start by jacking up this dude's car," he radioed back, melting the tires on a nearby sedan and causing a minor fender bender. The driver exited and pointed at the kid. "You did something to my car! I saw what you did!" His cover blown, the Melter proceeded to turn up the heat, lifting the entire car up above the streets and threatening to drop the heap of burning metal down on the civilian. Meanwhile, Stark wasn't faring much better. Narrowly dodging another gale force blast from Whirlwind, Iron Man's pulse beam failed to catch the villain square on. Knowing he was outgunned, Tony whispered into his communicator, "Rhodey, showtime." But at the same time, another order was given to his adversaries. "One moment," the Mandarin told his manicurist, staring down at his phone. "I want to see this." In that moment, Whirlwind retreated, taking to the skies and careening away from his fight with Tony. "Oh no, you don't," Tony said as he leapt towards Whirlwind, willing his repulsors to life, preparing to take to the skies. But as he jumped forward, his suit disobeyed his direct orders. "The burst of power I need to launch into flight doesn't come," he realized as his suit begins to disassemble around him. The government-mandated overseer Tony attached to his chest shut down his access to his suits in his moment of need. "Mr. Stark," a voice came over his earpiece. "This is Stane Hammer." "No," Tony whispered, realizing what was happening. No. "We've been monitoring your activities in Los Angeles and have elected to enforce a mandatory cooldown period rather than allow you to pursue your fleeing opponent," she said matter-of-factly. As Tony remained grounded on the outskirts of town, War Machine appeared before the Melter, not realizing he was about to be woefully outnumbered. "That's far enough," Rhodey called out to the Melter as he revved up his weapon systems. The Melter shot back as he began to ramp up his powers further and further. "Rhodey," Tony said over the communicator, "we got a problem." Sprinting towards his getaway car, Tony explained to Rhodey his predicament. "I put that governor of theirs on and it's not letting me suit up." "You what?" Rhodey yelled at him. Tony, powerless and almost naked, struggled to climb the fence, flipping himself over the top and landing roughly on the desert sand. "Rhodey," he told War Machine, "just keep him busy as long as you can, and if you need a run, run." As the Melter shot corrosive blasts of heat at Rhodey, he managed to outmaneuver the worst of the damage. Switching on his chameleon mode, War Machine was able to disappear from Melter's view. Rematerializing behind the kid, Rhodey took a metal-plated swing at the back of his head, trying to take out the villain in one hit. Melter went down hard, holding his head in both hands. Meanwhile, Pepper Potts was suiting up herself for the first time in years. "It seems as though it's been an abnormally long time since we were last in action, Miss Potts," Jarvis hummed to life as Pepper donned her rescue suit. "I know what I can do. I know what we can do," Pepper told Jarvis. "Just not sure I want to do it again. Only one way to find out." And with that, Pepper took off towards LA to bail out Rhodey. As Pepper and Tony both sped towards War Machine's fight, three of the most powerful people on the planet celebrated their coming victory. Stane Hammer, the Mandarin, and Ezekiel Stane couldn't help but acknowledge their assured shared success. "Even if Potts suits up and gets in the action, we've still got 3 operatives in the field," Stane Hammer reported. "And gentlemen, I like those odds." "Man, you really hit me," the Melter said as he struggled to stand, blood seeping from where Rhodey punched him. "Think I need a doctor," the kid mumbled as Rhodey kept his guns trained on him. "But not as bad as you, chump!" Melter bellowed as he raised his arm and managed to melt one of War Machine's arms clean off. Rhodey whipped around as his alarms began blaring in his ears. A yell came from behind him. "Die, pig!" Whirlwind, having caught up with the Melter, creamed War Machine with an avalanche of rock and slate. "About time, Whirlwind," Melter complained. "Dude gave me a damn concussion." Whirlwind's focus was still aimed squarely at burying Rhodey. "Don't you get it yet, pig? We're everywhere. And guess who can't save you anymore?" Careening through LA traffic, Tony and Cabe, his driver, struggled to get to the scene and help Rhodey. As they drove, Tony took a screwdriver and tried prying the governor off of his chest, but it was no use. "Some kind of electromagnetic lock happening," Tony grunted as he struggled, eventually recoiling as the repulsor in his chest started sizzling and sparking. "This thing is booby-trapped," Tony told Cabe. "It's not coming off." Fighting 2-on-1, Rhodey came out of the gate swinging, using his shoulder-mounted machine gun to stun Whirlwind. The War Machine armor whirred to life as Rhodey shot himself out of the mountain of rock that buried him. "Get some!" he yelled as he barreled into Whirlwind, taking him out with his one still armored fist. "You're scrubs," he told the two criminals as he zapped the Melter with a repulsor blast. "Always were, always will be." Another zap took down Whirlwind, who tried taking to the skies in retreat. "Sit down, shut up," War Machine ordered as he closed on the two supervillains. Springing up to the Melter, Rhodey once more took a big swing and knocked the kid on his backside. But before he could take down the two in earnest, a purple light zipped down from the sky, materializing before War Machine and sucker punching him with tremendous force. Rhodey fell to his knees. "Look," he managed. "That's right, sound it out. The living laser," the newcomer taunted him. "Now who's tough, huh?" the Melter yelled angrily, taking a knee to an already weakened War Machine's jaw. Rhodey hit the floor. "Is that the best y'all got?" Rhodey insulted the three supervillains as they circled around his broken and bleeding form. The Melter lost his temper at Rhodey's slight. "Grrrr!" he yelled as he burned through War Machine's chest plate. The living laser hovered in the air as he glared down at Rhodey. "Whirlwind, you might wish to stand back, so the living laser can deliver the kill shot." "No!" Rescue yelled, hurtling through the air only yards away. "Rhodey!" Pepper screamed as Living Laser brought his fist down, puncturing the armor where the Melter had weakened it. Pepper watched as Living Laser's empowered fist went straight through Rhodey's chest and stopped his heart. "We did it!" the Melter cried out gleefully. "We killed a superhero!" he yelled as Whirlwind sped the kid off into the atmosphere, Living Laser close behind. Rhodey, hold on!" Pepper begged as she landed beside War Machine's bleeding body. Moments later, Tony's car arrived at the scene and he barreled out of the passenger door. "Oh no," Pepper whispered. No! Tony pleaded as he sprinted towards his best friend. Pepper was shocked, holding her face in her hands and staring down at the body. "I couldn't, Tony, I was too late," and Tony tried some chest compressions but quickly gave up, standing and addressing the crowd. "Nobody touches him. You hear me? Nobody. Living Laser reported to Stane within minutes. "We just killed War Machine and wrecked half of downtown LA, the murderer said, expecting praise, but Stane was distracted. "Huh? Good. Great, I'll let Mandarin know. Just after I tell him I built a working version of his walking squid tripod death machine nightmare he's so obsessed with making," Stane said, gesturing to the giant hulking machine that lay next to them. Head in his hands, Tony sat in the ambulance that took Rhodey away from the scene. "Okay. We're okay." War Machine's voice sounded from under the blankets. "You sure?" he asked. "We're past the TV people now, Colonel Rhodes. You're clear." One of the drivers leaned back to tell him. From under the hospital sheets, Rhodey, somehow alive and breathing, emerged. Wrapped around his chest was a high-tech vest of some sort. The whirring and pulsating lights on the material somehow was keeping Rhodey breathing and conscious. "What are you calling this thing?" Rhodey asked. "The Stark Life Vest, maybe?" Tony told him. "Amazing," Rhodey said, in awe of the technology that had saved him from certain death. "Welcome to being dead," Tony joked. "You know we can't tell your mother, right?" I know, Rhodey said, understanding that it was important for the villains to believe Rhodey was killed in action. "Can you help me with this?" Tony asked his friends, not wanting to take his support for granted after Rhodey was nearly killed hours earlier. "I'm in, you know that," Rhodey told him. "Good," Stark said, relieved. "It's like we talked about. This is checkmate. They won. They think they got me drunk and under control. You dead, Pepper disgraced." Rhodey looked up at him. "So how do we fight back?" he asked. "We don't. Checkmate means we lost." Tony couldn't help but smile. They won that game. Now they're playing ours. Days later, another ghost from Tony's past appears in North Carolina with a new face. "Welcome to hell," Firebrand taunts Tony. The new villain is again empowered with far more advanced technology than the last Firebrand, making it all the more difficult for Tony to take her down. She blasts through skyscrapers and melts through everything she touches. Iron Man stays right on her heels, but can't quite catch the newest criminal from his past. A lucky repulsor blast manages to ground Firebrand, and she slams into a car with devastating impact. "Power down your suit and surrender now," Iron Man orders, but Firebrand is far from down and out. "Idiot," she says. "You think I came alone?" Behind him, Crimson Dynamo, with new armor as expected, levels her glowing fists at Tony. "Tony Stark," she says. "Somehow I'm not impressed." Tony doesn't give her a chance to make the first move. He barrels towards her and collides with a double uppercut, sending the dynamo flying into another nearby car. "Ladies, stay the hell down and disengage," Tony says, powering up his repulsor cannon in case either woman makes any moves. But just as the two supervillains consider staying down, Tony's suit starts to power off without his control. "No, damn it, Hammer, no!" he cries as his armor strips itself off his skin. Gigantic drones descend on the scene, taking control from Tony. "Stand down or face the Detroit Steel Corps," they command in steely robotic voices. "You have no right to do this," Stark yells, but bullet fire rained down from the drones before Tony could finish. Powerless and vulnerable, explosions rip through the streets all around Tony, nearly killing him then and there. The drone's pilots brutally injure the two criminals before scooping them up and carrying them away as Tony watches, helpless to stop them. Afterwards, the Avengers called Tony in for a scolding. Both Captain America and Miss Marvel met Tony at the Avengers mansion, and neither seemed happy for the reunion. "Good seeing you guys too," Tony joked. "Any word on anything?" "Sure," Steve said, anger radiating off his face. "Disaster. There's a word." "Unmitigated," Carol stepped in, placing her hand on Tony's shoulder. "Tony," she said, "let us help you." "Steve, Carol," Tony said, standing. "Go to hell." "Hey!" Cap marched towards Tony as he left. "Hey!" Tony spun around and swung a fist at Steve. Steve caught the punch, then another with ease. The two men stared each other down. "Cap, I'll be taking a leave of absence from the Avengers for a while. Thank you for understanding." The engineer behind the Detroit Steel Corps mechs, Ezekiel Stane, called one of their foremost pilots, Sasha Hammer, one night as he worked away in his lab. "How secure are we, Ezekiel?" she asked. 100%, Sasha, he assured her. "So, when do you make your move?" she asked. "It's complicated. There's been a complication," Stane replied. "He's in my head, Sash. I pissed him off. He zapped me with one of those rings of his, and now he's in my head, Sasha." Sasha had no pity for Stane. "Hey, boy genius, just tell me one thing. How are you planning to get him out?" Later, Ezekiel was unveiling the Mandarin his latest invention. A gigantic, highly efficient drone based on the Mandarin's own schematics. "And is it operational?" the Mandarin asked. "It's a work in progress is what I'm saying," Stane assured before booting up the robot. As soon as Stane turned the giant mech on, the Mandarin's maniacal aspirations began building. "It's absolutely beautiful," he said as the machine emerged. "Now, make it move. Let me see it," the Mandarin insisted like a schoolchild. Yes, sir, Stane said, piloting the controls. Yes, yes, Mandarin shouted, his excitement growing. "I have achieved greatness!" he yelled, but suddenly the machine began sparking and Stane's remote began to malfunction. "Uh-oh," Ezekiel muttered. The drone lurched over and crashed right through its containment unit. The damage was incalculable, and it became clear to the Mandarin the machine was not nearly ready to be launched. No, no! He screamed as his hopes came crashing down. The Mandarin leapt at Stane in rage. I can fix it, he protested, but the Mandarin's ringed fist soon met Stane's nose again and again as the businessman pummeled the engineer into the ground. Across the country, two loving partners sit down for dinner. They talk about their days and new fad diets they might try. Unexpectedly, one of the men received a text on his phone. When he looks up, his eyes have hardened with something cold behind them. His partner picks up his phone and reads the text. "It's time, Spy Master," he recites. "Why are you getting a text from Justine Hammer?" he asks. The first man walks to the kitchen and takes a knife from the cutting board. "I really did love you, you know," he says as he stands behind his partner. "So, I'll make it fast." Spy Master brings the knife down on his partner again and again, ensuring his quick death, before pulling off the mask that served as his face, revealing the high-tech suit beneath. General Babbage, the same official who insisted Tony install the governor to his armor, is raging in his office. His assistant hurries in. "General Babbage, sir, he's..." "What? You what?" the general yells. He goes silent when Tony Stark walks into his office unannounced. "She was dealing with me, General, and I don't have an appointment," he says, smirking. "Stark, I swear to God," the general starts to threaten, "I wish I could have you rendered to a black box somewhere for no discernible reason other than you annoy the hell out of me." But Tony cut the man off curtly. "I quit, General," Stark said, silencing the general. "I quit being Iron Man. Effective immediately," Tony said. "You win." Tony Stark lost on that day. But check out what happens when it's Peter Parker after the Iron Hero.